More from our breaking story now. The South African Police Service has confirmed that former State Security Agency Director General Arthur Fraser has laid criminal charges against President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Ramaphosa has been accused by former spy boss Arthur Fraser of concealing the robbery from the police and paying the culprits for their silence.
This is a story about money, spies, power, and two presidents accused of covering up a burglary. Not just any burglary, because the target was Phala, the game farm of South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. And there were large amounts of US dollars hidden in the furniture. For over 2 years, the break-in was kept a secret. Until Arthur Fraser, a former spy with connection to Ramaphosa's rival, Jacob Zuma, spilled the beans in 2022.
To demand that the president must step aside.
There were calls for Cyril Ramaphosa to come clean.
Phala can't go away. President Ramaphosa has to be kept accountable.
And the calls have not stopped even after his re-election. But this isn't just a South African affair. Arthur Fraser named several Namibian citizens as suspects, including the alleged mastermind of the heist, Emmanuela David.
Took out the window, we went inside. We went to the sofa. It's a leather sofa, you see. But now, that lady said, don't take everything because you're dealing with the president.
More astonishing still, Fraser claimed that President Hage Geingob offered to help track down the men and the money, all in strict confidence.
The main issue at the heart of this scandal is that the president of South Africa, instead of reporting the matter to the police in his country, he called our president to say the suspects should be arrested.
But with President Geingob no longer around and Cyril Ramaphosa enjoyed the protection of the government of national unity, will the veil of secrecy ever be lifted? Let's rewind to see how the Phala story unfolded. Cyril Ramaphosa first took office in 2018, promising to clean up the mess left behind by Jacob Zuma, whose presidency had been tainted by corruption allegations.
He came in on a ticket of corruption busting and a cleanup after President Jacob Zuma's presidency, or when President Jacob Zuma stepped down.
A new culture of transparency and accountability, where those who are given the responsibility to serve, whether as elected office bearers or public servants, do so as expected of them. It is a culture where corruption, nepotism, and patronage are not tolerated, and action is taken against those who abuse their power or steal public money.
In a State of the Nation address in 2020, Ramaphosa urged South Africans not to remain silent when they witness a crime. But he didn't say a word about the break-in at his own farm that had occurred just a few days earlier. In fact, he didn't mention it for more than 2 years. The affair only came to light after one of Zuma's allies, former spy boss Arthur Fraser, filed a report with police on 1st of June 2022. Fraser's statement contained explosive allegations. He claimed that a group of Namibians had stolen large amounts of foreign currency hidden at Ramaphosa's farm, and that the president of South Africa, instead of going to the police, asked his top bodyguard to secretly hunt down the suspects and recover the money. The allegations were serious, and they were made by a man with powerful connections.
Arthur Fraser's tenure at the helm of the National Intelligence Agency and State Security Agency have been shrouded in controversy.
As South Africa's spy boss, Arthur Fraser gained a reputation as a man not to be messed with. An ally of Jacob Zuma, he is thought to have facilitated the leaking of secret recordings that led to corruption charges against the former president being dropped in 2009. In 2021, when Fraser was in charge of South Africa's prisons, he ordered Zuma's release on medical parole, a move later declared illegal by the courts. When South Africa's Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, led by Judge Raymond Zondo, delivered its devastating judgment on Zuma's presidency in 2022, Fraser too came in for stinging criticism. And that raised suspicions about the timing of the Phala revelations, because Fraser's criminal complaint came just as Zondo's final report was being released.
The only reason why it came out is because Arthur Fraser, who has a lot to benefit from tainting President Cyril Ramaphosa's reputation because of the fact that he may be facing charges as a result of some of the things that he had done under the state capture years.
Former spy boss Arthur Fraser, on the other hand, has laid a criminal complaint against President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Fraser's statement made detailed claims of how the burglary at Phala was executed, but whom and what happened to some of the money. He says two men made their way onto the premises at around 10:15 in the evening on the 9th of February 2020. In full view of CCTV camera, they approached the house and forced open one of the windows. Fraser also claimed the cameras inside the house captured the suspects after midnight. But incredibly, it appears that video footage came from a neighboring farm, which the burglars had mistakenly targeted the previous night. Fraser said undisclosed sums of US dollars hidden in the furniture were stolen from Phala. And he named 5 Namibians as suspects: Urbanos Loboleni, Pietrus Fikepo Muhekeni, Erki Shikongo, Pietrus Afrikaner, and Emanuela David. Those who have spoken out publicly have denied their involvement. Even though the suspects were quickly named, Fraser said that no police report was ever filed. Instead, Fraser claimed the matter was to be handled in secret, not by the South African police, but by the head of presidential security, Wally Rood. His job was to track down the burglars and the money, but some of the cash was already draining away. In a statement, Fraser claimed that the suspects went on a spending spree in Cape Town. They first swapped the stolen dollars for rent at an informal exchange service run by Chinese nationals in the city. Over the following days, a number of purchases were made, including a 2019 Ford Ranger and a red Volkswagen GTI. And there were money transfers amounting to hundreds of thousands of rand. When the suspected mastermind of the break-in fled to Namibia, the affair spilled across the border. That suspect was Emanuela David, a man now facing trial in South Africa. The story of David's escape to Namibia in the midst of the COVID pandemic is a mystery in itself. On or around the 20th of June 2020, David crossed the Orange River to slip into Namibia using a canoe. On the other side, he was met by two men, former Fishcore executive Paulus Galanki and policeman Hendrik Hidipo. They drove him to Windhoek. At the time, Namibia's borders were closed due to the nationwide COVID lockdown. The events were still mixed in secrecy, but journalists had begun to ask questions.
There was already red flags raised when this individual called Emanuela Davids, who came over the border illegally, was picked up by the former finance manager of Fishcore at the time, and he came into the country, was helped. He was escorted. He allegedly broke COVID-19 regulations, or he broke it. He admitted guilt. So that entire story already raised red flags as to what exactly was the criminality in terms of why he fled, because we called him at the time a fugitive from South Africa linked to some criminal activity.
When David was arrested on the 14th of June 2020, it was for illegally entering the country. Police reports from the time say that David carried a tech, our watch, a Rolex watch, and a gold chain, altogether worth almost $500,000 Namibia dollars, plus 11,100 US dollars notes. Despite suspicions over his role in the burglary, David's arrest was reported as a lockdown violation. People close to him believe the quarantine regulations were used as an excuse for detaining him so South African state security agents could grill him in Windhoek. South African investigators arrived in Namibia soon after. On the 25th of June, President Ramaphosa, top bodyguard, Major General Root, crossed the border into Namibia, along with the president's close advisor, Benchani Chauke. They were then flown by helicopter to Windhoek, where Chauke met President Hage Geingob. Chauke says the meeting had nothing to do with the Phala burglary. Arthur Fraser, in his criminal complaint, had a very different explanation. President Ramaphosa sought the assistance of the president of Namibia, Hage Geingob, in apprehending the suspect in Namibia, he said. And he supported his claim with a Namibian police crime intelligence report. That report stated explicitly that South African security agents met Namibian police in no man's land and handed over details of the break-in at Phala, as well as the names of the suspects. Crucially, Fraser claimed that the South Africans requested for the matter to be handled in confidence.
Niels Becker, in his police report, put that the story must be kept under wraps because of the potential outrage it could cause in South Africa.
As President Cyril Ramaphosa remains tight-lipped over the details of the robbery at his farm, the fallout is being felt in Namibia.
The main issue at the heart of this scandal is that the president of South Africa, instead of reporting the matter to the police in his country, he called our president to say the suspects should be arrested.
President Hage Geingob strongly rejected Fraser's account. He specifically denied the allegation that he had inappropriately used his office to assist his South African colleague. But as an independent expert report submitted to South Africa's parliament pointed out, Geingob's statement did not specifically deny that Ramaphosa had sought assistance. General Fani Masemola, the head of the South African National Police, approved the use of a device called a grabber to spy on communications. And he approved spending thousands of rands to search for the Phala suspects. Even though Root and Chauke left Namibia again after 2 days, the South Africa investigation on Namibian soil seems to have continued.
We spoke to one of the principals. They allegedly said that the South African officers were interviewing them, and it was not, no Namibian officer was present in that. And that speaks to people's rights being abused because you're undermining our law.
Journalists were able to piece together some of the details of what the South Africans were up to in Namibia. As the investigators followed the trail of the money, it appears they interrogated locals in Amusati region who had noticed an unexplained influx of money spent on cars and property. They were the same people the media spoke to as part of their investigations.
I spoke to the police in the Msati region where it's alleged that the money, part of the money was spent, like to buy a guest house in Otapi, a car that was bought by a school principal. Part of the money was spent on the traditional homestead of Mr. Emmanuel David.
Even though Namibian police had secretly identified the burglary suspects, the alleged mastermind, Emmanuel David, was only convicted of minor immigration charges, fined and ordered to leave the country in November 2022. In 2022, the Namibian Sun newspaper got hold of a recording of David apparently being questioned by two South African males. The paper claimed that one of them was Wally Root and that the interrogation took place after David was released from detention in Namibia. But while it's not clear exactly where the conversation was recorded, it raises a number of questions.
Took out the window, we went inside. We went to the sofa. It's a leather sofa, you see. But now, that lady said, don't take everything because you're dealing with the president.
Apart from confirming details of the break-in, the recording sheds light on some of the allegations leveled against Major General Root's secret investigation. For example, the claim that he assembled a team that went after the suspects in a heavy-handed way.
Last year we were here in Manhattan. Yeah? The guys came with the police. Good. They just took the Rolex, they beat us, they want to take us, what. They just, where's the money? They took out the whole ceiling of the house. You see? They want the money. They said, no, the money was spent. You see? Me, I was even in jail. You know the story. I was in jail. They say what. Okay. They know what. Then they went to throw us. They throw us in the bush.
The recording also raised questions over the amount of money that had been stolen. President Ramaphosa's camp says that $580,000 in cash were taken, and that the money came from the sale of buffalo to a Sudanese businessman. However, David can be heard saying that they took $800,000 and implied there may have been more.
We took about $800.
800,000.
800,000. Me, I got my share 3. I took. You understand? The guy took. And then we get that lady 2. Yeah. You understand?
It's a discrepancy that was also picked up by the independent expert panel reported to South Africa's parliament over the affair, which called it disturbing. In any case, the presence of undeclared foreign currency at a private residence in itself raised concerns.
The president was supposed to, first of all, not have so much money in cash lying around. It was supposed to be in a bank. Number 2, the president, if he has such amounts of money, more than the threshold, he's supposed to declare that he's having this amount of money, and he must also declare where it comes from. It means that there's exchange control laws that were broken, and then there's also financial intelligence laws that were broken.
However, an investigation by the South African Reserve Bank cleared Ramaphosa's wrongdoing. But opposition politicians criticized the finding, which argued that the money wasn't technically the president's, as the buffalo sale had not been legally concluded. Meanwhile, back in Namibia, the secrecy surrounding the entire investigation meant that the work of the Namibian police ultimately ran into the sand. A formal judicial assistance request was never made to Namibia, and Prosecutor General Martha Imala was forced to drop her investigations and return seized money and property. She says South African authorities declined to assist the investigation of her office. Ramaphosa has consistently denied wrongdoing.
I've never stolen money from our taxpayers.
In June 2023, South Africa's public protector, an independent official charged with safeguarding democracy, cleared the president. Instead, it put all the blame on Major General Root and his associates. The report said Root had assembled his own team and engaged in an unofficial criminal investigation, interviewing suspects, witnesses, and conducting surveillance operations without registering a case. The findings cleared the way for Cyril Ramaphosa to contest and ultimately win a second term as president. But the ANC suffered its worst election result since the end of apartheid. For the first time, the party lost its parliamentary majority, leaving the president humbled.
What this election has made plain is that the people of South Africa expect their leaders to work together to meet their needs.
It was the ANC's control of parliament that allowed the party to dismiss the independent panel of experts report into Phala in December 2022, which had found Ramaphosa had a case to answer. With that majority gone, the president will have to rely on his partners in the new government of national unity for protection. For now, the Center-Right Democratic Alliance, which had previously called for Ramaphosa to be investigated, has promised support.
We will take our chances on the side of the president in this one, rather than take it with those who would seek to bring down a government.
But opposition parties, including Jacob Zuma's MK, have vowed not to let Phala go.
Today's conversation has strengthened the MK party's resolve to pursue justice, as the MK party will remain committed to uncovering the truth behind Phala. We are now even more determined to explore private prosecution.
There is now a court battle seeking to revisit the independent panel report and for the public protector's findings to be set aside so a new investigation can be established. And with the trial of some of the Phala suspects due to play out in South Africa's courts, there's plenty more unwelcome publicity to come for the South African president. Prime suspects Emmanuel David's testimony so far has already brought new details to light, and there's surely more to come, not least on Namibia's involvement in the affair.
Should it be found that Namibia was complicit through its state institutions or through its officials, it will erode trust in our public institutions, where our rules are only applied selectively to certain individuals. So we need to ask ourselves serious questions. What kind of Namibia do we want to construct?
Namibia is already reeling from fish rot, the country's biggest corruption scandal that has posed uncomfortable questions for the SWAPO government. President Geingob is no longer around to shed light on the Phala affair, so it must fall to his successors in the party and in government to make sure that the promises of transparency and rooting out corruption in Namibia will be fulfilled.